All right, hello everyone. I am Thomas, and welcome to my channel. I do educational videos on many different topics, and we are in the middle of a unit. We're discussing the reciprocal system of theory of Dewey B. Larson. This was a theory of everything that Larson developed back in the 20th century. He died back in 1990, but made great progress. Put out some books on physics and astrophysics and chemistry, astronomy, economics. We are looking at his final book that is on metaphysics. It's called Beyond Space and Time. The basic gist of Larson's theory is that he arrives at a universe that is not made out of matter, and it is not made out of energy, but it is made out of motion. And he defines motion as the relationship between time and space. Time and space both have three, I would say 3 or 4 dimensions, and they are reciprocals of each other. So they are really the same, but they are in relation on a fraction uh, or a ratio um, in motion. So everything is motion, and you know, and everything is expressible in units of time or space. And there is also a discrete unit postulate, meaning that there is a quantized minimum unit of time and a minimum unit of space. And he basically took about 20 or 25 years to develop that that general idea in 2 postulates. And then he took those postulates and he deduced a theoretical universe from that, and then took the time to compare his theoretical universe with the actual universe that the scientists had already, um, discovered or arrived at. And he claimed that his system, basically 90% of his system went, or 90% of the actual universe of the scientists went into his system unobstructed. And it was only really on the margins, the 10%, that he found disagreement with and attempted to to correct. And those 10% had to do with the realms of the very small, the very large, the very fast, and the very slow. And so things like quasars, white dwarf stars, also some aspects of electrical, the electron, and things in the realm of the microscopic. Um, he has different takes on kind of all of those things as a result of his theory. But then he worked on his theory for 30 or more years after that, writing many, many books and many, many articles, drawing a very small following, of 100 or less people, I would say, and maybe more. I wouldn't say 1,000 though, but eventually he died. His theories were carried forward to an extent by Dr. Bruce Perret and others up until Perret's death in 2020. And the theory, I believe, is being threatened to kind of fall by the wayside, and people kind of forgetting about it. And that's due to a number of different factors, but that's why one of the reasons why I teach it here is because I think it's very, very important, especially in the so-called democratizing of science. We have with the reciprocal system, if we can understand it, we have the ability within ourselves to arrive at the principles of science by ourselves. We do not have to rely on some dude in a white lab coat. We don't have to rely on somebody in an ivory tower telling us how these things are. Um, the reciprocal system of theory enables us to derive our own universe from these principles. All we have to do is really become fluent in how these principles, what they are and how they work. And Larson gave us a great, he didn't go all the way. He's just one guy, but he laid out the groundwork and he showed how it could be done. And all we have to do is kind of follow in his footsteps a little way, and then like we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we'd be able to really understand this stuff ourselves and not have to rely on scientists for what we think is, the truth, and the healthy way to do it, or um, the most efficient way to do it, or anything like that. And so that's why I think it's important. Now, his final book, he would say would be of greater importance because it has to do with the metaphysical realms, the realms of psychology and philosophy and religion. And these things are more all-encompassing than the field of science. Uh, I think that's kind of what his opinion was. That's what he felt about even about his books on economics, which we'll look at later too. So this is, I believe, the 17th episode that I've done on his book Beyond Space and Time. I also did like 15 videos on his deductive development of the reciprocal system. Okay, that gives you kind of his step-by-step approach. That's just an article. It's a long article, or it was a talk that he gave that lays out step by step how he derives it. So you can kind of like go check his work on that. But here we're dealing with his metaphysical, and we're on the chapter that's called Communication General. And this has to do with communication from Sector 3. So now he has, so if you look at Einstein, Einstein says that the maximum speed of the universe is the speed of light. Larson has his universe of motion. So for Larson, the speed of light is actually not the maximum speed. It is the midpoint, or it's the neutral point of the universe. And there's half of the universe is moving slower than the speed of light, half is moving faster than the speed of light. The part that's moving slower than the speed of light is the part that we kind of reside in. This is the realm of chemical, the inanimate matter, okay? And the part that's moving faster than the speed of light is we don't really have direct access to it other than by extrapolation from knowing what's going on here in the physical. We can know what's going on here by extrapolation. All you have to do is reverse the roles of space and time. Okay, and so this sector 2, this is sector 1. Sector 2 is really what he calls control, the life. It's where life enters, where once this sector 1 unit gets to its maximum complexity, which is DNA, then it can be controlled and taken over by this sector 2 unit, and they work together as life. And then once life develops to its most complex, which he says is like the intelligent human being, then it actually can be taken control over by the sector 3 component. And the sector 3 is the beyond space and time. So this is, I would say, it has to do with the actual speed of light, the boundary between these two sectors, where all the relationships of time and space, they evaporate because it turns into one. The speed of light is 1 unit of space per 1 unit of time. And so everything just kind of dissolves, and all of the duality dissolves. And you just have this realm of the speed of light. And that's sector 3. In Larson's terms, that's God. And so God is the thing that takes control over the intelligent human being and turns it into an ethical human being, or you may say spiritual, or a saint or something. But it's a battle between sector 2 and sector 3 for control or dominance of that organism. And so it's a gradual process. And he says that very, very few people have made it to the point where sector 3 is in total dominance of sector 2. Sector 2 is pursuing survival, whereas sector 3 is pursuing ethics. And so at certain times, the ethics and the survival, they work together. But at certain other times, they are at odds with each other. So here we're talking about the kind of the initial communication between sector 3 and the life unit. And he calls that at the start of ESP, but then eventually he turns that into a more generalized term, in insight or intuition. And here he's so this is again in chapter 9, if you happen to have this. All of his books are online, basically, relatively easy to find. This one is the hardest one to find, but you can find it on there. Okay, unless the individual himself has physical access to the idea or to the basic information from which he can derive it by physical processes, he can get it only from non-physical sources by non-physical means. And this is the intuition or the insight from sector 3. The term intuition is commonly used in a broad sense to include the entire range from the major flashes of insight down to trivial items of everyday experience. And again, he goes into kind of some research of other people. But he says, our finding is that intuition is indeed a non-physical process, but it is nevertheless a strictly natural process, not a miraculous one. It is direct communication between sector 3 and the control units through sector 3 channels. Quite obviously, much of the information obtained through flashes of insight or other forms of intuition is erroneous, either in whole or in part. And in the opinion of most philosophers, this unreliability of the information invalidates the entire concept. But then he says, unless the receiver is adequately prepared to handle the information which he receives, it will not be intelligible either to him or to anyone else to whom he attempts to communicate it, no matter how accurate the information may have been at the source or how faithfully it was transmitted. And, the idea there is that the information that you're receiving from sector 3 is correct. Our ability to translate that information into ways that we understand it and ways that other people understand it, that's where the errors come from. And so that is what has to be verified. We have to verify our intuitions before they are valid. And then he gives the example of Aristotle, and he says Aristotle could have never received the insight that would have enabled him to formulate a theory of electromagnetic induction way back in 350 BC, because he wasn't prepared for that. There wasn't like step-by-step process going toward electromagnetic induction. So he says a long series of mental leaps by many different individuals over more than 2,000 years was necessary before the proper conceptual background could even be established to permit the discovery of the phenomena. And he says Faraday made that leap in 1831, but it still took a long time to explain the discovery. So the quality of the reception depends on the general level of knowledge, as well as on the receptive capability of the particular individual concerned. Not because this general level has any particular significance in itself, but because it determines the level of knowledge which the individual can attain by study of the existing body of information. Okay, and then he goes through some of the other philosophers out there and what their opinions about intuition and its validity. Since only a relatively small number of individuals are qualified to receive full and complete insight in any relatively advanced field of knowledge, and then only in a limited segment of that field, the incomplete and erroneous intuitions greatly outnumber the genuine. Now, that later he kind of talks about, maybe delineates between intuition and insight, scientific insight. Intuition is more of a general thing, and it's universal. It's a day-to-day mundane kind of thing. It's open to everybody, whereas scientific insight requires a great deal of preparation before you're ready to accept the intuitions or the insights that you get. So, intuition is much, much more likely to be accurate than insight, because intuition is really more about, common sense things that we're all kind of prepared to address, as opposed to scientific insight, which requires, a good deal of preparation before we're ready. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean scientific preparation. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a PhD or something like that in science in order to have it. But it just means that you have to put in some time to study and get yourself to the point where you can understand the communication that you're going to get. In view of the questionable nature of so much of the information obtained by intuition or insight, it may legitimately be asked what justification there is for giving any weight to the products of these processes. The answer can be found in what has been said about the capabilities of mechanisms. Okay. He's talking about mechanisms here, but the mechanisms, those have to do with physicality. And so here he says, the physical mechanism of which the human mind is a part is subject to the same limitations as any other mechanism. It cannot produce anything that is genuinely new. The innovations that are required must come from a non-physical source through some form of intuition. So in order to get anything new, which brings in the idea of creativity, in order to get really anything new, you're getting that from your intuition, from the sector 3 communication. Otherwise, it would be, if it comes from your organism, your mechanism, it's already kind of been rehashed, and I guess there was nothing new under the sun. But if you're talking about intuition from a sector 3 source, that is where you're getting the new stuff. And then here he goes into the ethics, the inability of philosophers to find any empirical, that is, physical, basis for ethics is actually a significant addition to the many items of evidence confirming the validity of the inductive conclusion that we reached here. The conclusion as to the reality of non-physical existence independent of space and time. Ethical principles cannot be derived from physical experience. Since they cannot be derived from physical experience, they then, some authors then deduce that there is no meaning in ethics. But he says, neither scientific insight nor intuition gives us positive and certain answers to all our questions. In some cases, there is virtual certainty. In others, we obtain answers that only have some degree or probability of being correct. But in these instances, whatever uncertainty may exist can be eliminated by a process of verification. Okay, so we have to be able to verify our intuitions in order to give them validity, to have them on the same level as kind of deductive conclusions. This is all kind of in the realm of the inductive. Now, I think we're basically out of time here, but hopefully we're getting to the end of this chapter, and maybe we'll start up again on this chapter, but the next chapter is on Revelation. So we will begin to start that chapter tomorrow. And otherwise, hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.